dissociation or deconversion from a group. Basically, and then we talk about one particular, I suppose, institutional case study, and that would be the example of deprogramming. Okay, this happens when a person is involved in a religious or organization that is somewhat far afield of mainstream traditional religious participation. That would be a cult or a sect, and how people are, have people disconnect themselves through that. The deprogramming was a technique that was used in the 1980s that would forcibly remove a person and sort of re-socialize them, breaking them down and completely realigning them in terms of kind of an orientation that would distance themselves from the religion. And it was practiced with the Hare Krishnas, Unification Church, and so forth. Finally, in Chapter 5, we discuss the church-sect continuum of religious organization. One thing that may not be evident in your text is the way that sociologists define a sect versus a church. A sect, and sometimes people get this confused with a cult, but a sect is a religious group that is somewhat distanced or disassociated from mainstream society. In other words, they set themselves apart from the mainstream society. The Westboro Baptist Church, for example. A church, in a sociological definition, has nothing to do with the biblical definition of a church in the New Testament, but has to do with how integrated a group is with society. So it can be, in terms of sociology of religion, it can be, a church can be anything defined by means of its level of integration within the mainstream society. A group that comes in, we have groups, and I know that they go to Kennesaw State as well, because I've checked. There's a religious group that goes around the country, and they go to college campuses specifically, and they set themselves up, and they tell you that you're going to hell, etc., etc. Usually they'll be set up outside of, it's been a while, it's been a bit since I was at Kennesaw campus, but outside of the food court, wherever that might be. Where I teach and where I went to graduate school, they would set themselves up in the most populous public area, and they would shout at people. Okay, they would tell students that they were going to hell, call women names, decry people that did not participate as they did. That is sort of a sectarian example, because they are setting themselves apart from social integration. Whereas, if you're a student at Kennesaw State, and you're on campus, for example, you have access to all sorts of religious, or a Baptist student, campus student group, or Catholic student group, or a Muslim student group. These are all sort of mainstream groups that sort of integrate their religious traditions in with a larger society. They're well integrated into society. Okay. That's not to confuse social integration as a function of religion for the individual in a community. Okay, so the term social integration applies both to groups and to individuals. When we're talking about social integration for the individual, we're talking about the degree to which, and it's a structural, functional explanation for those of you who have had an intro class, hopefully. It talks about how religion aids in the smooth functioning of society. In other words, social integration for the individual states that, according to Rodney Stark, who they cited in the book, if you are in a religious community, you're less likely to be a deviant, for example. Okay. We talk in chapter 6 about religious conflict. Okay. Religious conflict, conflict between religious groups, conflict within religious groups. It is rarely about religious doctrine alone. it is intermixed fairly comprehensively, religion as an institutional arrangement with arrangements of politics, the economy, family, and power. Religious conflict has to do with who is gaining control over resources, whether it's Muslims fighting Christians for control of the Holy Land during the what the Christians call Crusades, whether it's the struggle in Northern Ireland in the 20th century, which was pretty successfully resolved in the 1990s, or Sikhs, Hindus, and Muslims in India, or even you could say more liberal Christian traditions versus more conservative ones in the United States. Look at chapter 6 with an eye towards religious conflict. Finally, we talk about religion and politics, how religion is interactive with the political system. We don't really, while we have technically on paper separation of church and state in the United States, we definitely have a situation whereby there is some involvement of religious groups in political participation. So we don't really have a true separation of church and state. That's a kind of a, we do certainly legally and on paper, but in reality, religious groups of all sorts, liberal and conservative, have an impact on the political realities of the United States, up to and including voting, donating money, volunteering to support candidates, or candidacy itself are all ways in which religious groups participate. And there are culture wars or debates, which sort of lead back to the idea of religious conflict between religious groups and secular groups along issues such as the death penalty or pro-life versus pro-choice groups. So that's something to be aware of as you review your material. Please review Johnston in particular for this test, and look over the website that we've covered as well, and you should do fine. Again, this test is on a 14-point scale. I am in the process now. Let me check. Let me take a look at a calculator. Let's see. 90% an A would be anything 12.6 to 14 would be an A. 11.2 to 12.5 would be a B. Let's see, 9.8 to 11.1 is going to be a C. .4 to 9.7, a D, and anything less than 8.4 would be a failing grade. I will post this in an annotation on this video. Please, I wish you the best of luck. Please keep in mind too that there will be some instructions for viewing this video. There is some system on Desire to Learn where you have to unlock a video in the left-hand corner, which I will provide instructions for, written instructions for, as an introduction to this video when you see it posted online. It will be posted. It is now about 2:20 on March 11th, 2014. I'm in the process of producing this video and uploading it to YouTube, and will then provide a link and a way for you to access the link in the space marked Test 1 Review and Test. This is also the space where your test will be posted, once it becomes available on March 19th. Thank you very much. Good luck.